I used to measure my life in bus rides and late-night shifts. You don't have to work this hard, Maya would say, touching my arm while I tied my shoes at 6 a.m. I always laughed. It's temporary, I'd tell her. One day we'll sleep in. I worked mornings at a delivery warehouse and nights at a small grocery store. In between, I hurried home just to see her smile for 5 minutes. I told myself exhaustion was proof of love. If I was tired, it meant we were building something real together. She'd press a coffee into my hand and whisper, "I'm proud of you." That was enough to keep me going. We met in a crowded college hallway when she dropped her books and I knelt to help. "Thanks," she said, brushing hair from her face. "I'm Maya." I remember thinking her name sounded like music. We started with cheap coffee dates and long walks where she told me, "I want my own business one day. I don't want a normal life." I told her, "Then I'll build it with you." Later, when her tuition bill scared her, she whispered, "I might have to quit." I shook my head. Not happening. "We'll figure it out. I've got you." She smiled through tears and I felt 10 feet tall. I believed love meant never letting go of her dreams. After that, my paycheck stopped feeling like mine. "Use my card," I'd say when rent was due. "Focus on your classes," she'd argue. "I hate depending on you." I'd grin. "You're not. You're investing in us." When she wanted to sell handmade jewelry online, I stayed up building her website. "Does this look professional?" she asked, leaning over my shoulder. "It looks like the start of an empire," I told her. Every sale felt like my own victory. Watching her grow made the long shifts worth it. I'd printed shipping labels before work, packed boxes at midnight, and whispered, "One day we'll laugh about this." She kissed my cheek and said, "I couldn't do this without you." Still, little things began to change. She started turning her phone face down. "Just spam calls," she'd say too fast. When I asked about dinner, she'd sigh, "I'm tired." "Can we not talk?" I told myself stress made people quiet. One night, I reached for her hand on the couch and she shifted away. "Sorry," she muttered, eyes on her screen. I laughed it off. "You're busy building an empire, remember?" But inside, a thin crack formed that I refused to look at. Sometimes she smiled at messages she wouldn't show me, and when I asked, "Good news?" she just said, "Work stuff," then walked into the other room to answer calls. I ignored it all. Whenever doubt tried to rise, I pushed it down with the same line. "Love means sacrifice." I'd whisper while washing dishes at midnight. If she came home late, I'd say, "You're working hard. I'm proud of you." If she forgot our plans, I'd shrug. "We have a lifetime." Daniel once asked, "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm lucky, man. She's chasing her dreams." Saying it out loud made it feel true, even when my chest felt tight and my apartment felt lonelier each week. I stared at the ceiling some nights and told myself, this is just a phase. Then I turned over and pretended sleep came easy beside her quiet breathing every night. Last night, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug gone cold. "We need to talk tomorrow," she said softly. My stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She forced a small smile. "No, not wrong, just important." I searched her face for clues for the girl who once dreamed out loud beside me. "Okay," I said, trying to sound calm. "Tomorrow then." After she went to bed, I stayed up staring at our shared calendar on the wall. I told myself it might be good news. Maybe her business was growing. Maybe all my sacrifices were about to mean something. I went to sleep holding hope like a fragile glass in my shaking hands that night. Maya told me to wear my best shirt. "It's just coffee," she said, but her voice sounded tight. I followed her into a glass-walled cafe where the menu didn't have prices, just words I couldn't pronounce. I whispered, "Are you sure we're in the right place?" She squeezed my hand and said, "Trust me, okay?" I nodded, feeling my thrift store collar itch against my neck. Everyone around us looked polished, like they belonged to another world. I tried to smile, but my stomach felt hollow. "This is nice," I said. She didn't answer. She just kept looking toward the door like she was waiting for someone more important than me. I suddenly felt underdressed, underpaid, and completely out of place beside her quiet, distant expression. A man in a tailored suit walked in, sunlight catching the metal on his wrist. Maya straightened. "He's here," she murmured. I turned as he approached our table with slow, confident steps. "Maya," he said, smiling like he owned the room. Then his eyes shifted to me. "And you must be?" I stood and offered my hand. "I'm her boyfriend." He shook it briefly, already pulling away. "Adrian," he said. His watch flashed again when he sat down. I noticed the way Maya looked at him, nervous, excited, different. I tried to joke. So, you're the boss she talks about? He smiled without warmth. Something like that. I felt like a background extra in a movie where I didn't know my lines anymore at all suddenly. We ordered coffee I couldn't pronounce. Adrian didn't look at the menu. Maya tells me you've been very supportive, he said, folding his hands. I shrugged. We're a team. Maya stared at her cup. Adrian leaned back. I offered her a position at my firm. Marketing. Real salary. Benefits. I blinked. That's great, I said, forcing a smile. You deserve that. Maya inhaled sharply. There's more, she whispered. My chest tightened. Adrian spoke smoothly. We've grown close working together. I looked at her. Close how? She finally met my eyes, and I saw the answer before she said it. My fingers curled under the table, nails digging into my palm while I waited for her words. The air felt thin and sharp around us now. I didn't plan this, Maya said quickly. It just happened. I heard a ringing in my ears. What happened? I asked. Adrian answered instead. Feelings. Connection. Compatibility. I laughed once, short and dry. We've been together 3 years, I said. We built everything from nothing. Maya's eyes filled. I know, and I'll always be grateful. Grateful. The word hit harder than an insult. Grateful? I repeated. Adrian checked his watch. Let's keep this respectful, he said. I looked at him. You think this is a meeting you can manage? He didn't blink. I think she deserves a stable future. I felt like I was being slowly erased while they discussed my life like a business deal right in front of me without shame at all. Mia reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I need security, she said, voice shaking. I can't wait years hoping things work out. I stared at her. I worked 2 jobs, I said quietly. I'd paid rent, tuition, everything. Tears slid down her face. And I'll never forget that. Adrian cleared his throat. This isn't about the past. It's about the future. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Our future, I said. Maya shook her head. I don't see it the same way anymore. Something inside me cracked so softly I almost missed it. I nodded once. Okay, I said, though nothing was okay. The cafe noise faded until all I could hear was my own breathing, slow and heavy in my chest. Adrian stood first. We should go, he said gently, like I was a stranger. Maya wiped her cheeks. She looked at me like she wanted forgiveness before asking. I'm sorry, she whispered. I couldn't find my voice, so I just nodded again. They walked toward the door together. I stayed seated, staring at the empty chair across from me. The bill sat on the table, more than I made in a shift. I left cash anyway. Outside, the city felt louder than usual. I walked home alone, every step heavy. I replayed her words, his smile, that shining watch. I had given her everything, and still somehow I was not enough. The night air felt cold, but I barely noticed it on my burning face. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Maya, I called, already knowing the answer. The apartment echoed back at me. The couch looked smaller. The shelf by the window was empty where her plants used to sit. I walked to the bedroom and stopped. Half the closet hung bare, my shirts pushed to one side like leftovers. So this is how it ends? I muttered. My voice sounded strange in the quiet. On the kitchen counter, a single folded paper waited. My hands shook as I opened it. I'm sorry. I have to think about my future. I laughed once, sharp and hollow. Your future, I whispered. Right. The sound bounced off the walls like a joke nobody else heard. I sank into a chair and stared at the note. 3 years, I said out loud. That's all we were worth? My chest tightened, and before I knew it, I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. You could have just told me, I choked. I would have listened. I pressed my palms to my eyes, but the tears kept coming. Every corner of the room felt like it was watching me fall apart. I looked at the dent on the couch where she used to curl up. I hope he makes you happy, I said bitterly, then shook my head. No, that's a lie. I hope you remember me every time something goes wrong. My words sounded cruel, but the hurt was louder than my pride right now. My phone buzzed in my hand, and her face filled the screen in old photos. I swiped through them slowly. Remember this? I whispered to no one. You said we'd never give up. There we were at the beach, laughing with sand in our hair. Another picture showed her holding the first package from her little business. You said, we did this, I murmured. Not I, My throat burned. I kept scrolling, punishing myself with memories. Was any of it real? I asked the empty room. I zoomed into her smile, searching for signs I missed. Tell me when you stopped loving me. I whispered, but the photo stayed silent, frozen in a happiness that didn't exist anymore. My phone rang again, this time with Daniel's name flashing. I wiped my face and answered. Hey man, he said carefully. You okay? I forced a laugh. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? He paused. Maya unfollowed you, and she posted some fancy dinner. Who's the guy? I stared at the wall. Just work stuff, I lied. We're fine. Daniel didn't buy it. Don't do that, he said softly. Don't pretend, I swallowed. I'm serious, I'm good. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he said, if you need a place, my couch is yours. I nodded even though he couldn't see. Thanks, but really, I'm okay. We both knew that wasn't true, but neither of us said it. After we hung up, I dropped the phone beside me. I'm okay, I repeated, and almost laughed again. I looked around at the half-empty apartment and felt smaller than ever. Maybe I wasn't enough, I said quietly. Maybe love needs more than effort. The thought cut deep, but it felt honest in that moment. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling she used to point at while making plans about the future. No more begging, I whispered into the dark. No more chasing someone who can walk away. My voice steadied as I said it again. I will never beg for love again. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was the first promise I made only to myself. I dropped a box at work and didn't even flinch when it burst open. You okay? My supervisor asked. I shrugged. Yeah, just tired. He watched me stack the wrong labels on 3 orders before pulling me aside. This isn't like you, he said. I stared at the floor. I'll fix it. He sighed. You've been somewhere else all week. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. Take the rest of the day, he added. I nodded, knowing what that meant. As I walked out, he called after me. I hope things get better. I almost laughed. Me too, I muttered. But the words felt empty, like promises I couldn't afford anymore in my chest. By the end of the month, my bank app looked like a warning sign. Rent's due, I whispered to myself, staring at numbers that didn't add up. I skipped breakfast, then lunch. I'm not hungry, I told my reflection, even when my hands shook. My landlord knocked one evening. You late again? He asked. Just a few days, I said quickly. He frowned. I can't keep doing this, I nodded, shame burning my throat. I understand. After he left, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch. You wanted to be strong, I told myself, so be strong. But strength felt a lot like sitting alone in the dark, counting coins, pretending you weren't scared. Daniel showed up without warning. You look like hell, he said the moment I opened the door. I tried to smile. Nice to see you too. He walked inside, looked around, and shook his head. When did you last eat? I shrugged. Yesterday? Maybe, he grabbed my arm. Pack a bag. You're coming with me, I pulled away. I'm fine. He didn't let go. No, you're not, and I'm not asking. I stared at him, too tired to fight. Just for a few days, he added softer. I nodded slowly. Okay. As we walked out, I glanced back at the apartment. I thought this place was the start of everything. I murmured. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. It's not the end either, he said quietly. At his apartment, he handed me a plate of food and watched until I took a bite. Talk, he said. I chewed slowly. She chose someone else, I replied. He shook his head. That's not what I meant, I sighed. I gave everything. It still wasn't enough. Daniel leaned forward. Listen to me carefully. She didn't leave because you lacked value. I looked up, then why? He held my gaze. She left because she wanted shortcuts. The words hit differently. I didn't answer right away. You built from nothing, he continued. She wanted the finish line without the race. I stared at my plate. So what does that make me? He smiled slightly. Still the guy who knows how to build. That night, I opened my laptop at Daniel's kitchen table. What are you doing? He asked. Trying something, I said. I logged into freelance sites I'd used once for Maya's business. You still know this stuff? He asked. I nodded. I built her brand from scratch. I can build for others. He pulled up a chair. Then start. I hesitated. What if no one hires me? He shrugged. Then you try again tomorrow. I posted my first gig with shaking hands. There, I said quietly. Daniel grinned. Look at you. I didn't feel strong. I felt tired and scared. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had done something instead of just surviving. Later, lying on Daniel's couch, I stared at the ceiling. I'm still a mess, I said. He called from his room. Yeah, but you're a moving mess. I laughed softly. That's supposed to be encouraging? Very, he replied. I closed my eyes, exhaustion pulling at me. I don't know if I can fix everything, I admitted. He answered without hesitation. You don't have to fix everything. Just fix today. I let that settle in my chest. I still felt broken. I still missed her. But somewhere under the pain, something small refused to disappear. One day at a time, I whispered to myself. It wasn't hope yet. But it wasn't nothing either. Still awake? Daniel asked one night. Walking into the kitchen at 2 a.m., I didn't look up from my laptop. Deadline, I muttered. He poured water and leaned on the counter. You've been saying that every night, I shrugged. Every night I need the money. He watched me type for a second. You're getting faster, he said. I nodded, yeah. And better, it wasn't confidence, it was survival. I spent my days watching tutorials and my nights fixing mistakes clients never saw. When one project got rejected, I whispered, okay, do it again. No one clapped. No one noticed. But slowly, my hands stopped shaking when I sent finished work. Quiet progress felt strange, like building something in a room with no lights on. One afternoon, a new message popped up. Hi, I saw your portfolio. Are you available for a long-term project? I typed back, yes. What do you need? The reply came fast. Brand design, social media strategy, and website tweaks. My last freelancer vanished. I smiled faintly. I don't vanish. Her next line made me pause. Good. I need someone reliable, not flashy. We set up a call. When her face appeared on screen, she waved. Hi, I'm Lena. I cleared my throat. Nice to meet you. She got straight to it. I care about quality. Can you handle honest feedback? I nodded. I prefer it. She smiled. Then we'll get along fine. Our first project was messy. This isn't hitting the tone, Lena said gently. I rubbed my eyes. Too corporate? She nodded. I want warm, not cold. I adjusted colors, rewrote copy, redesigned layouts. Hours later, I sent a new version. She messaged back, yes. That's it. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. She added, you actually listen. That's rare. I typed, listening saves time. She replied, it also builds trust. I stared at that word for a moment. Trust felt unfamiliar in work, almost dangerous. But Lena never rushed me or talked down to me. She paid on time. She said thank you. It felt strange being treated like a professional instead of a stepping stone for someone else's dreams. Weeks turned into months. You're my go-to now, Lena said during another call. I blinked. Seriously? She laughed. You're consistent, you care, and you don't disappear when things get hard. I swallowed. I don't quit easily. She tilted her head. That's a strength. Not everyone has it. I didn't tell her why quitting scared me. I just nodded. More work came in small businesses, referrals from her friends. Daniel peeked at my screen one evening. Look at you, he said. Busy, I smiled faintly. Good busy. He bumped my shoulder. Proud of you, man. I didn't know how to respond, so I just kept typing, letting the steady rhythm of work drown out the noise in my head. One night, Lena said, you should raise your rates. I almost laughed. People are paying me. I don't want to scare them away. She shook her head. You're undervaluing yourself. I hesitated. I'm still rebuilding. She leaned closer to her camera. Exactly. Rebuilding doesn't mean shrinking. I thought about that after the call. The next day, I adjusted my prices slightly. No one complained. In fact, 2 clients said, fair rate. I sat back surprised. Huh, I murmured. Daniel heard me. What? I grinned. Turns out I'm not as replaceable as I thought. He raised a fist. Told you, it wasn't a victory parade. It was just a quiet realization that maybe I had more worth than I gave myself credit for. I didn't post about my progress. No pictures, no updates, no announcements. You're like a secret agent, Daniel joked. I shrugged. I don't need anyone watching. My world shrank to my laptop, coffee mugs, and late-night brainstorming sessions. But inside that small space, something steady grew. One evening, Lena said before hanging up, you know, working with you feels easy, professional, respectful. I nodded slowly. Thank you. After the call ended, I sat in the silence for a moment. No drama, no pressure, just work, effort, and mutual respect. I whispered to myself, this is what it's supposed to feel like. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like I was building something no one could take from me again. Daniel walked into the living room holding his phone like it was something fragile. Hey, he said carefully, you busy? I glanced up from my laptop. Deadline tomorrow, but what's up? He hesitated. You might want to sit, I sighed. That dramatic, huh? He handed me the phone without another word. I took it and saw her name at the top of the screen. My chest tightened before I even looked at the picture. I don't have to see this, I muttered. Daniel shrugged. I figured you'd rather know than hear it from someone else. I nodded slowly. Yeah, okay. I braced myself and scrolled down, already feeling the old ache stirring in my ribs like a bruise I thought had healed. The first photo hit like cold water. Maya stood in a white dress, smiling at the camera while Adrian held her hand up to show a ring. The caption read, "Forever starts now." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Engaged, I said quietly. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah. I zoomed in on the dress and froze. I bought her that, I whispered. Remember when I worked extra shifts for her birthday? Daniel nodded slowly. I remember. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Guess it found the right event. My voice sounded calm, almost detached, like I was talking about strangers instead of the girl who once planned a life with me. I kept swiping through the photos. Fancy restaurant, soft lighting, expensive flowers. He really went all out, Daniel muttered. I stared at Maya's face in each picture. Look at her smile, I said. Daniel leaned closer. What about it? I tilted the phone toward him. It's not reaching her eyes. He squinted. You think? I nodded. I know her. That's her be polite smile. Daniel crossed his arms. Still hurts though, I swallowed. Yeah, it does. But the pain felt different now, less like a knife and more like an old scar I could trace without bleeding. I kept looking, not to torture myself, but to understand what I was really seeing in those staged, perfect-looking moments. Daniel sat beside me. You mad? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No, he looked surprised. Seriously? I stared at the screen a second longer, then locked it. I'm not angry, I said slowly. I'm clear. He raised an eyebrow. Clear, I nodded. She chose security over love. She chose the fast road over the hard one. Daniel exhaled. That says more about her than you. I leaned back into the couch. I used to think I lost something, I admitted. Now it feels like I dodged something. He gave me a small smile. That's growth, man. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt like a fog I'd been living in had finally lifted. I looked at the dark screen in my hand. I really thought she was my future, I said softly. Daniel nodded. You loved her for real. I let out a slow breath. Yeah, I did. I thought about the late nights, the sacrifices, the plans we made. None of it felt wasted anymore. It felt like lessons I'd already paid for. You okay? Daniel asked. I surprised myself by nodding. Yeah, I actually am. The hurt was still there, but it didn't control me. It just existed like background noise I could finally ignore. For the first time, I didn't feel like I needed her to regret leaving me to feel whole again. I stood and walked to the window, phone still in my hand. The city lights blinked in the distance, quiet and steady. You chose money, I whispered to the empty glass. Now live with it. I didn't say it with bitterness. I said it like a fact, like something that no longer belonged to me. Daniel watched from the couch. What was that? He asked. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Nothing, I said calmly. Just letting go. He nodded, understanding more than I explained. I stared out at the night a moment longer, feeling lighter than I expected. Some endings don't explode. Some just quietly loosen their grip, and you realize you're already walking forward without looking back anymore. Hey, can you check this site? Lena asked during our call. Their branding feels familiar. I clicked the link she sent and felt my stomach drop. The homepage colors, the layout, even the slogan's simple elegance, personal touch were mine. I whispered, no way. Lena leaned closer to her camera. You recognize it? I nodded slowly. I built this style, every piece of it. I scrolled further and froze at the logo. I designed that, I said quietly. Lena frowned. For a past client? I swallowed. For my ex. Saying it out loud made the room feel smaller. She never changed it, I added. She just scaled it. My pulse thudded in my ears as realization settled hard. I clicked through the product pages, my chest tight. These descriptions, I said, I wrote them at 2 in the morning while she slept. Lena's voice softened. Are you sure? I nodded. I still have the drafts saved. The same phrasing, same layout flow. She sat back. And she's making money off this? I laughed under my breath. Looks like more than before. I scrolled to the team page and saw Adrian's name listed as Strategic Director. I leaned back, staring at the screen. He didn't build this, I muttered. He bought his way in. Lena watched me carefully. How are you feeling? I expected anger. Instead, I felt cold focus settling into place. This isn't just inspiration, Lena said gently. This is your work, I nodded. I never signed anything giving it away. She tilted her head. Do you have files, dates, proof? I blinked. Yeah, old backups, emails, design drafts. She didn't hesitate, then protect it. I hesitated. You mean legally? She met my eyes. Yes, intellectual property matters. I rubbed my neck. I've never done anything like that. Lena shrugged. You built something valuable. You don't have to let people take it because you're too kind to fight back. I stared at the screen again, seeing years of effort reflected in clean lines and polished branding that now belonged to someone who walked away from me. That night I opened old folders I hadn't touched in months. You really keeping everything? Daniel asked from the couch. Every draft, I said. Every timestamp. He walked over and whistled. That's a lot of work. I nodded. I poured everything into that business. He looked at me carefully. You thinking revenge? I shook my head. No, just fairness. I uploaded files to a secure drive, labeling each version. Feels weird, I admitted. Like I'm digging up a past life. Daniel clapped my shoulder. You're not digging. You're documenting. I paused, then nodded. Yeah, documenting. For the first time, looking at those memories didn't make me weak. It made me aware of what I actually created. The next day, Lena sent me a contact for a small legal consultation service. Just ask questions, she said. I scheduled a call, hands sweating. When the lawyer asked, did you create these materials independently? I answered, yes. Saying it felt powerful. I explained timelines, showed drafts, emails, and screenshots. You may have a strong claim, the lawyer said. I muted the call for a second and exhaled slowly. Lena texted, how's it going? I replied, I might actually have rights. She answered, of course you do. I unmuted and listened carefully as the lawyer explained steps I could take. Each word sounded less like conflict and more like reclaiming something I never truly gave away. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair. So? Daniel asked. I looked at him and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. I'm not helpless, I said quietly. He grinned. Never were. I glanced at the open tabs on my screen: evidence, plans, next steps. The situation wasn't solved yet, but it was no longer just pain, it was strategy. I whispered to myself, you built this. You can protect it. For the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel like the guy who got left behind. I felt like someone standing up, not to hurt anyone, but to make sure my work, my effort, and my worth weren't erased again. You remember that guy Adrian? Daniel asked one evening, leaning over the back of the couch. I didn't look up from my laptop. Hard to forget, I said dryly. He held up his phone. Words spreading, something about investigations. My fingers paused over the keyboard. Investigations? He nodded. Financial stuff. Risky investments. People not getting paid. I leaned back slowly. Where'd you hear that? He shrugged. Friend of a friend works in that circle. I stared at the screen without seeing it. I guess expensive watches don't come with guarantees, I murmured. Daniel snorted. Guess not. I didn't smile. I just turned back to my work, letting the information settle quietly in my chest. A few days later, Lena brought it up on our call. You won't believe this, she said. A client almost partnered with Adrian's firm. They backed out last minute. I raised an eyebrow. Why? She hesitated. Rumors. Financial instability. I nodded slowly. Makes sense. She studied my face. You're not surprised. I shrugged. I learned a long time ago that shortcuts have interest rates. She gave a small smile. Still focused on your projects? I turned my screen toward her. Just finished the redesign. She clapped softly. See? This is what matters. I felt a strange calm hearing about his problems. Not joy, not revenge. Just distance, like watching a storm from behind a window. Daniel tossed his phone onto the table one night. Another one, he said. I looked up. What now? He leaned back. 2 employees quit from their company this week. I whistled under my breath. That's not a good sign. He grinned. Karma doesn't knock, it breaks doors. I smirked faintly. You've been waiting to use that line, haven't you? He shrugged. Maybe. I stared at my laptop again. I don't need anything bad to happen to them, I said quietly. I just need to keep moving forward. Daniel nodded. And you are. His voice softened. That's what's driving them crazy, whether they admit it or not. I didn't respond, but his words echoed longer than I expected. One evening, I opened social media out of habit and noticed something strange. She hasn't posted in weeks, I muttered. Daniel glanced over. Who? I gave him a look. Oh, he said. Yeah, I noticed. I scrolled through old photos, then stopped. It's quiet, I said. Daniel shrugged. People get quiet when things get loud behind the scenes. I locked my phone. I hope she's okay, I said before I could stop myself. He studied me. You still care? I exhaled slowly. I care about the person I loved, not the choices she made. He nodded. That's fair. I didn't feel pulled back into the past. I just felt like I was observing something that no longer controlled me. During a late-night work session, Lena said, You've been consistent for months now. Your client list is growing. I smiled faintly. Slowly. She shook her head. Steady beats fast. I hesitated. Sometimes I wonder if success is just luck. She leaned closer. No. Success is what happens when you keep showing up while others burn out. I thought about that. About sleepless nights, rejected drafts, quiet progress. Maybe, I said. She pointed at the screen. Your success will be the loudest answer. I let the words sink in. Not revenge, not confrontation, just proof built piece by piece. It felt healthier than anger, stronger than bitterness. Later, lying on the couch, I stared at the ceiling while Daniel watched TV. You ever think about reaching out? He asked casually. I didn't have to ask who he meant. No, I said calmly. Why? He shrugged. Closure, maybe. I shook my head. Closure doesn't come from conversations. It comes from clarity. He glanced at me. And you have that now? I nodded. Yeah, I know who I am without her. He smiled slightly. That's growth. I closed my eyes, listening to the quiet hum of the room. Somewhere out there, their world was shaking. Mine wasn't. Mine was still focused, moving forward one step at a time without needing to look back. My phone buzzed on the table at 12:17 a.m. I almost ignored it. But the name on the screen made my chest tighten. Maya, I whispered. Daniel glanced up from the couch. You gonna answer? I stared at it a second longer, then picked up. Hello? There was a pause. Then her voice came through, small and shaky. Hi, it's me. I leaned back in my chair. I know. Silence stretched between us. I didn't know if you'd answer, she said. I didn't know if I should, I replied. My voice sounded calm, even to me. Daniel quietly got up and went to his room, closing the door behind him. I was alone with a voice I once knew better than my own. I'm sorry to call this late, she said. I shrugged even though she couldn't see me. What's wrong? She inhaled sharply. Everything. I didn't rush her, I just waited. Adrian's company is falling apart, she continued. Investors are suing, accounts are frozen. People are blaming him. I closed my eyes briefly. I heard rumors. She let out a shaky laugh. They're not rumors. I could hear her breathing, uneven, like she was trying not to cry. I don't know who else to talk to, she said. I stared at the wall across from me. You have friends, I replied. Not like you, she whispered. The words landed softly, but they didn't reach the place they once would have. I made a mistake, she said after a long pause. I didn't respond right away. I thought I was choosing stability, she continued. I thought I was being smart. I finally spoke. And now? Her voice cracked. Now I feel stupid. I feel trapped. I feel like I threw away the only person who ever really cared about me. I listened without interrupting. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. It felt like hearing a story I used to live in but had already walked out of. Say something, she pleaded softly. I exhaled slowly. I'm listening. That was all I could honestly offer without pretending to feel something I didn't anymore. I thought you'd be angry, she said. I was, I replied. For a long time, she sniffed. You have every right to hate me. I shook my head, though she couldn't see. Hate takes energy, I said quietly. I used mine to build something instead. She went silent. I could almost hear her processing that. Are you doing okay? She asked carefully. Yeah, I said. I am. There was no pride in my voice, just truth. I'm glad, she whispered, and I could hear tears behind the words. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt distance, like we were standing on opposite sides of a river neither of us could cross anymore. I miss you, she said suddenly. The words hung in the air between us. I looked down at my hands. I know, I said gently. She started crying then, quiet at first, then harder. I thought money would fix everything, she said between breaths. I thought love would wait. I closed my eyes. Love doesn't wait forever, I replied. She sobbed on the other end of the line. I didn't try to comfort her. I didn't tell her it would be okay. I just listened. The way you listen to rain hitting a window you're no longer standing outside in. After a while, her crying slowed. Do you think we could ever? She started. I stopped her softly. I loved you, I said. My voice didn't shake. But you loved security more than me. Silence filled the space after that. Then a quiet broken, I know. I stared at the dark ceiling above me. I didn't feel cruel. I didn't feel kind. I just felt honest. I hope you figured things out, I added. She sniffed again. You always were the strong one. I almost smiled at that. Good night, Maya, I said. Good night, she whispered. I ended the call and set the phone down, my heart steady, my mind clear, and my past finally quiet. Email from the lawyer, Lena said during our morning call. I straightened in my chair. Already? She nodded, screen glowing on her glasses. Cease and desist letters were delivered yesterday. I exhaled slowly. So it's real now. She gave a small smile. Very real. I looked at the draft notice on my screen, my name listed clearly as the original creator. I'm not trying to ruin them, I said quietly. Lena shook her head. You're protecting your work. That's not revenge. I nodded, letting that sink in. For so long I felt like the guy who got left behind. Seeing my name attached to something official made me feel like I finally existed in my own story again. Daniel walked in while I was rereading the legal summary. You look serious, he said, grabbing coffee. I turned the screen toward him. They can't legally use my designs anymore. He blinked. So what happens now? I shrugged. They have to pull branding, marketing materials, maybe even rebrand entirely. He whistled. That's expensive. I nodded slowly. Consequences usually are. He studied my face. You feel bad? I thought for a moment. I feel steady, I said. Like something out of balance is correcting itself. He clapped my shoulder. That's not cruelty. That's accountability. I leaned back in my chair, surprised by how calm I felt while the storm I once feared was finally moving on its own. A week later, Lena messaged me. 2 of their contracts just dropped. I stared at the text. Because of the notice? She replied partly. Clients don't like legal trouble. I set my phone down and let out a slow breath. No celebration, no victory dance. Just a quiet understanding that actions echo. That night Daniel asked, still no urge to call her? I shook my head. What would I say? He shrugged. I don't know. Told you so? I laughed softly. That wouldn't change anything? He nodded. You're different now. I thought about that. I'm just not chasing closure from the wrong places anymore. Saying it out loud made it feel permanent. Ready to talk about your company? Lena asked during our next call. I blinked. My company? She grinned. You already have steady clients. You just need structure, a name, and a proper launch. I hesitated. That sounds big. She tilted her head. You built for others for years. Why not build for yourself? I sat quietly for a moment. Okay, I said finally. Let's do it. We spent hours brainstorming names, refining services, and planning announcements. For the first time, I wasn't building in the shadows for someone else's dream. I was building something with my name on it, something no one could quietly walk away with when things got hard. Launch day felt surreal. Website's live, Lena said, smiling on screen. Daniel stood behind me with his phone ready. Moment of truth, he joked. I refreshed the page and saw my brand, my portfolio, my story. It's real, I murmured. Within days, inquiries started coming in. Then more. Lena laughed during one call. Told you your work speaks for itself. I shook my head, amazed. I spent so long thinking I was behind. She pointed at the screen. You weren't behind. You were building foundation. Each new client felt like a brick placed carefully, steadily, without shortcuts, without borrowed shine. Just effort, experience, and my own name finally standing in the light. One evening, after finishing a project, I sat quietly and thought about everything that had happened. I didn't feel like I had defeated anyone. I felt like I had stepped back into alignment with myself. You okay? Daniel asked from the kitchen. I nodded. Yeah. He studied me. Peaceful? I smiled faintly. Balanced. He raised an eyebrow. Deep, I chuckled. I just realized something. He leaned on the doorway. What? I looked at my laptop, my growing client list, my own logo at the top of the screen. Justice isn't revenge, I said quietly. It's balance returning. And for the first time, I truly believed it. Can we meet? Just once. That was the message she sent. I stared at it for a long time before replying, okay. Public place. We chose a small cafe near the park. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting by the window with her hands wrapped around a cup she wasn't drinking. For a second, I didn't recognize her. She looked thinner, tired, like life had pressed harder on her than she expected. She looked up and gave me a small, nervous smile. Hi, she said softly. I nodded and sat across from her. Hi, Maya. My voice sounded calm, almost distant, like I was greeting someone I used to know well. Thank you for coming, she said. I shrugged. You said it was important. She nodded, eyes dropping to the table. I won't take long, I waited. She inhaled slowly. I owe you an apology, a real one. I didn't interrupt. I thought love could be replaced with comfort, she continued. I thought money, stability, all of that would make me feel safe. Her voice trembled. But I was just scared of struggling again. I folded my hands on the table. I know, I said quietly. She blinked. You do? I nodded. I always knew you were afraid of uncertainty. I just thought we were facing it together. She swallowed hard, guilt written all over her face. I hurt you, she said, tears forming. I left like everything we had was temporary. I held her gaze. It wasn't temporary to me. She wiped her eyes. I see that now, too late. I didn't feel the old sting. I just felt a dull echo of something that had already healed. Why did you want to meet? I asked gently. She hesitated. I guess I wanted to know if there was still anything. I leaned back slightly. Anything what? She looked down. A chance, a way back. The words hung between us, fragile and desperate. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel temptation. I just felt clarity settle deeper into my chest. I'm not the same person you left, I said calmly. She nodded. I can see that. I studied her for a moment. You didn't lose me, I continued. Her eyes lifted slowly. What do you mean? I exhaled. You traded me for a version of life that looked easier. Tears slid down her cheeks. I thought I was choosing better. I shook my head gently. You were choosing faster. She covered her mouth, crying quietly. I didn't reach across the table. I didn't look away either. I don't hate you, I added. But I can't go back to being an option you reconsider when things fall apart. My voice stayed even, steady, honest. I don't deserve another chance, she whispered. I didn't answer that. Instead I said, I hope you learn from this. Really? She nodded through tears. I already have. Silence settled between us, not heavy, just final. After a moment, she managed a small, sad smile. You look happy. I thought about that. I'm at peace, I said. She nodded like she understood the difference. We sat there a few more seconds, two people who once shared everything, now sharing nothing but a quiet goodbye. I stood first. Take care of yourself, Maya. She looked up at me like she wanted to memorize my face. You too, she said softly. I walked out of the cafe into the cool afternoon air. My chest didn't ache. My hands didn't shake. I just felt light. Like I had finally set down something heavy I'd been carrying for years. Daniel texted, how'd it go? I typed back, closure. He replied with a thumbs up. I slipped my phone into my pocket and started walking toward the park, breathing in deeply. I didn't feel like I had won anything. I just felt free. And for the first time in a long time, walking away didn't feel like loss. It felt like choosing myself without looking back. I stood in the middle of my new office, staring at the blank wall where my logo had just been mounted. Feels weird, doesn't it? Daniel said, spinning slowly in my desk chair. I laughed. Weird good. He gestured around. Look at this place. Glass door, your name on the wall, actual plants you didn't forget to water. I crossed my arms, taking it in. I used to work at a kitchen table, I said. He grinned. Character development. I shook my head. More like survival. He pointed at me. Nah, this is your villain origin story. I raised an eyebrow. Villain? He smirked. Fine, hero with better boundaries. I couldn't argue with that. Lena walked in carrying coffee. Are you two done rewriting history? She asked, smiling as she handed me a cup. Never, Daniel said. I took a sip and looked around again. I still can't believe this is mine. Lena tilted her head. You built it. Why wouldn't it be? I shrugged. For a long time, everything I built ended up belonging to someone else. She gave me a knowing look. Not anymore. Daniel raised his cup like a toast. To intellectual property and emotional growth, I laughed. You're impossible, he winked. But correct. The three of us stood there for a moment, quiet, the kind of silence that feels earned instead of empty. I walked over to the window and looked down at the street below. You okay? Lena asked softly. I nodded. Yeah, just thinking, Daniel leaned back. About her? I didn't flinch at the question anymore. A little, I admitted. But not in a way that hurts. Lena stepped beside me. That's healing, she said. I watched people crossing the street, each one heading somewhere that mattered to them. She took my heart once, I said quietly. Daniel didn't joke this time, he just listened. But she didn't take my mind. Or my will, Lena smiled gently. Those are the parts that built this place. Daniel stood and stretched. You know, past you wouldn't recognize present you, I chuckled. Past me was tired all the time. He pointed at my desk. Past you would have given this office away to someone else's dream. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I would have. Lena looked at me carefully. What changed? I thought for a moment. I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who already decided not to see it. Daniel snapped his fingers. There it is. Character arc complete. I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling. I just learned that loving someone shouldn't mean disappearing. Lena raised her cup. That lesson was expensive. I clinked mine against hers. Worth every cent. My phone buzzed with a new client notification. Daniel peeked at the screen. You're booked for weeks. I nodded. Yeah. He studied me. Does it feel like winning? I thought about that carefully. It doesn't feel like beating someone, I said. It feels like becoming someone. Lena's smile widened. That's better. I leaned back against the desk, feeling calm settled deep in my chest. Not excitement, not revenge. Just steady confidence, like I finally trusted myself to handle whatever came next. The pain that once defined me now felt like a chapter I'd already read, learned from, and closed without tearing out the pages. Daniel grabbed his jacket. All right, big boss, celebratory dinner? I laughed. You're just here for free food. He grinned, obviously. Lena headed toward the door, then paused. Before we go, she said, you should say it. I frowned. Say what? She nodded toward the logo on the wall. I looked at it, then back at them. The words came easier than I expected. I didn't win because she lost, I said quietly. Daniel stopped joking, listening. I took a breath. I won because I finally chose myself. Lena nodded, satisfied. Daniel smiled. And as we walked out together, I realized that for the first time in years, my future felt like something I was walking toward, not something I was chasing.